Smile. Welcome to week something 6. Is next week 7? I'm a little out of the loop, but welcome. And how would you all do? What were the challenges last week? What did you learn?
It was quite a challenging week for us.
It was.
With our issue, and just like sorting, I think first like sorting alphabetically and being able to make a function that would actually properly sort things, especially moving inactive items to the bottom. So it was great to be able to kind of rely on the team and be able to like talk and work through the issue together.
Oh, it's amazing. Do you think this was like your hardest issue you've done so far? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That's good. I watch you all work in the channel and I'm like blown away by the teamwork. Like usually we see a lot of teamwork come to the like final weeks when it comes to styling and stuff, but you all already feel very like close and able to work together like really fluidly. So that's amazing to see. Great job. What else? What other struggles or neat things? It's okay if there's nothing. It's okay if you don't remember any of it because life is so wacky right now. It's hard to keep track of everything. Anyway, if there are no other general thoughts, I do want to share one announcement, and that is that Miles had to take a step away from her assistant mentorship role to take care of herself, which is something that we fully encourage and support here at Collab Lab. If you feel like you need time and space, we're always here to help anybody who needs it. And we very much encourage you to take care of yourself before anything else. Oxygen mask style, you know what I mean? So with Miles being out, I'm gonna take on all of the responsibilities that she'd committed to before, along with Jill and EJ's help as well. So we're all here for you and nothing changes except for that we don't have our beautiful friend Miles with us every week. But hopefully they're getting all the solitude that they need to make it through these times. Anybody have any questions about that? Good. Okay, cool. Well, with that, how about we see some demos? Who wants to go first?
We can call on somebody. We'll do it.
We can go first.
EJ, I love that. All right, you're up.
Okay, cool. Okay. So our issue this week was, as a user, I want to view a list of my shopping list items in order of how soon I'm likely to need to buy each of them again, so that it's clear what I need to buy soon. So for the AC, it was items and lists are shown as visually distinct according to how soon the item is expected to be bought again. Items should be sorted by the estimated number of days until the next purchase. Items with the same number of estimated days until next purchase should be sorted alphabetically, and items in different states should be described distinctly when read by a screen reader. So it definitely took us some time this week, but we finally finished the entire issue, which was great. And we have it sorted by different colors, and we have these different badges next to them letting you know if you need to buy within 7 days, between 7 and 14 days, more than 14 days, or if you haven't bought it yet, as well as if this item is inactive, meaning that it hasn't been bought in like 2 times more than the calculated estimate time frame. So yes, so here is all of our color coded, and then we have all of our items that require the same time, or that have the same time period in which they need to be bought, ordered alphabetically. So as you see with the inactive items, bananas come before grapes. You can see never bought, that's an alphabetical order, and all of them within the different categories are in alphabetical order.
Hi, I have a question. First, since I was involved in helping out, I would love to hear how you solved this and got this all to be put together. Second, do I see a bug with cereal not appearing next to apples, or am I misunderstanding how the sorting works?
I think
that's just because we keep manually going in and changing parts of the estimate to last purchase and old purchase. So right now the last purchases are not where they would be if a normal person just clicked on it on the front end.
So you're saying a user could never actually make that happen?
Yeah, no, that was us playing in the back.
Makes sense. Thank you for explaining. So I would love to hear how you actually got this together, two of you.
Yeah, for sure. Let me pull up our code as well for that. But yeah, so we, reached out to the group and wanted to talk more about, or like ask for advice on how to best kind of handle this situation. And Terry actually told us or gave us advice to create these different functions, the sort item functions for making A and B separate inactive items, and being able to use our original elapsed time function for those specific items in order to call that inside of this other, within that function, and with a conditional statement saying that if A and B are both inactive, then we want to compare them alphabetically. And then if it's inactive, then we return 1, moving it up in the list. If it's inactive, or if B is inactive, then we want to move it down in the list. But I think Gabby's going to go into a little bit more detail with the entirety of our code as well.
Sweet.
All right. I'll just use your screen share.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. So we, where are we at here? Okay, yeah. So we const is same or after is referencing from Day.js, where we found what they call them plugins. So we were able to just say if I believe if the date is the same or after some other date, then do this. So it saved us having to do another like if puzzle and whatnot. So that saved us quite a bit of work. And then for the color codes, to figure out what color everything is going to be based on how many days left until it's going to be purchased. We used the difference between the last purchase date and the current date to get the day since purchased. And then from there, we had an estimated countdown, which is which is the calculated estimate minus the day since purchased. And the estimated countdown is daily giving us an update on how many days left until they think it's going to be bought. And then elapsed time is the secret variable that ended up being the answer to our final issue of getting everything to sort properly. So we had the elapsed time for already, and we were using if the current date is the same or after the last purchase date plus calculated estimate times 2, then we would start working with that. So if it was true, it would be inactive. And so that makes it so anything that is more than calculated estimate times 2 from the last purchase date is going to be considered inactive. And as of right now, it is also, if it's 0, it will also be inactive. Or if the calculated estimate is 0, which means it's only been purchased once, it will also be inactive. Then as you see, we have the estimate countdown 7, 14, greater than 14, and we moved it up from there. Then we also had to keep in mind that for the stuff that's never been bought yet, so that's where we have the is not a number part of the else if. Next part, sort items by soonest to latest estimated repurchase. This was the fun part. So we let's actually, can you slow down a little bit? Start to the part where we actually figured it out.
Like all the way.
Okay, yeah, no, right, it's good. So we started with the sort by calculated estimate. We were to just do if this calculated estimate was equal to or different than that calculated estimate, then move it up or down based on that answer. We also and then for alphabetical, it's just we did that first and said if the name is before or after, then adjust that as well. And then, so I guess at that point we kind of had a sort and a sort. So then the part I guess we started stumbling on really was the sort within a sort within a sort. So we were like, where's this third sort coming? Where are we going to do this third sort? What are we trying to reference? And we tried a few times trying to use elapsed time, but it wasn't, we couldn't like, I guess, get it, like phrase it properly, I guess, for it to work. So with Terry's help, he gave us the idea for the reusing the elapsed time inside the sort so that we could create the A and B inactive. And then at that point, and they're basically the same thing with except for the A and the B. And then at that point, we were able to just do if the inactives are true or false, order them as such, and then also with the naming part as well. So that ended up being the final piece of our puzzle there. I guess if you scroll down to the bottom, yeah. Where's our code?
Right here.
Oh, okay. So the label, item name and stuff is already there. We added the badges, as you saw on the front. So it's a span with the class name, and the class name is the item 0. So it's like the soon, kind of soon, blah, 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 that was like up at the top earlier. And that's what's running that. The item, oh yeah, so for what the badge is named is using item 1, which originally was actually the ARIA labels, but we kind of repurposed it because we realized we didn't actually need the ARIA labels for it to work for the screen reader. So we kind of just repurposed that to the 1. And then we did have like a weird thing going on with when we tried the screen reader, we had some weird stuff going on where without ARIA hidden, okay, yeah, so on Chrome and Firefox, it actually reads quite nicely overall. But on Safari, it repeats everything twice, like the whole thing repeats twice. So we did add an ARIA hidden to try to fix that, but then it messed up the Chrome and Firefox, which didn't give us all the details we needed.
So I just want to say, I heard this and I was really curious to see if you had caught it. So I'm really glad that you talked about it. So thank you. I'd be happy to explain on a different meeting just so we don't take up this meeting, but we'll talk about it for sure. That works for you.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry to cut you off. I just want to make sure that was addressed.
Yeah, so that was another thing too. We also noticed Chrome and Firefox seem to skip the disabled stuff. We're not sure if that's like a thing. So that was also kind of a question. But yeah, I think that's our entire code.
I love it. This is super complex, and I'm very interested to hear more about that at whatever the next meeting is about the accessibility stuff, EJ. That's very interesting. But brilliant work here. This is intense and complex, and I'm really proud of you all for working through this together. Did anybody have any comments, questions about this? Thoughts? Ideas?
I want to say, first of all, that I'm really proud of everyone for getting this figured out. Thank you, Terry, for pitching in. And thank you, Gabby and Eden, for trying so hard and for not getting discouraged. It was really awesome to see. This is really cool stuff. This is stuff that happens to software engineers in production all the time. So you have now been through it a little bit. You can come to your next dev job ready to go with some misery to bring to the table. Seriously, this is really good stuff, and you should be very proud of yourselves.
Yeah, EJ makes a really great point, kind of going back to some things we talked about last week, that like, if you can like real quick before these memories start to fade, document some of the struggles you faced and how you overcame them, even if it's like, we were facing this challenge, we didn't know what to do, so we asked for help and Terry came and helped, you know, like there was some great teamwork happening. Even if you didn't like solve some kind of big problem on your own, like talking about that kind of communication and collaboration in interviews and stuff can be a really powerful way to show that you're a great team player and can be productive, even if you don't know the answer, which is a big thing as a junior dev, because I think a lot of people in hiring positions and management positions are like nervous to hire junior developers because they're like, what if they get stuck? you can be like, well, then you just ask for help. So make mental notes of these things, write them down, think about how you might present them if somebody asks you about a time you faced a struggle like this. So, but brilliant, brilliant work here. This is beautiful and amazing. Great, so if there's no other questions on this one, we can move to the next demo. Alex and Terry, good to go? Okay, cool. Perfect.
Yeah, so our issue this week was to just add a delete button here. Sorry, just gonna pull up the issue here. Add a delete button to each item and then show a window dialog just to make sure that the user wants to delete it. And then if they agree to then delete the item from the list and in turn from the Firestore database. And so just a quick demo, here's the delete button. We created a custom modal here, which Terry will be talking about more of later on. And then if the user chooses not to delete the item, the dialog closes. And then if they do, it disappears from the list here. Terry, did you want to talk more about the code?
Yeah. So I guess the most challenging part of our issue this week was implementing that custom model. At first, we used the default Windows API for the confirmation window, but then we thought about how we'll eventually want to make a custom one and style it. Might be easier to get started on the model this week. So to implement the custom model, we made a separate component. If you can show that. And this component is pretty hard-coded to the functionality of deleting an item, since we're passing in the delete function as a prop and the item that we want to delete also as a prop. So back on the list component, the delete button is tied to it sets the item name of the name of the item we want to delete in state. So when we create the button for each item, we're dynamically passing in the item name as well. That way, when the user clicks on a delete button, it sends the item name to the model. And that way the model can confirm and delete the item if the user presses OK. And if you can go to the delete function.
Sorry, Terry, the confirm delete function here, or?
The one that uses the API call.
Right, okay. That is in.
Yeah, delete item. It takes the token and the item name. And we figured out how to delete certain fields in the Firestore, which is just using a .update and then sending the item name and then the Firestore delete function as a value. And that removes it from the database. And I think that's pretty much it for the code.
So on that one, it wasn't enough to use the token to delete and like update that item? You had to use the name too.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Terry.
Yeah. For each custom list, we're storing the items as key value pairs with
Got
the
it. Okay,
item name being the key.
perfect. Okay, cool. That looks great then. Nice work. Any other thoughts about this one?
Great job, y'all. I have a couple of thoughts. So
Yes.
Stacy, please forgive me while I stall the meeting yet again.
No, please do. Your
As
thoughts
we're
are
getting
always
into
brilliant.
the final portion, thank you. As we're getting into the final portion of the project, which is very exciting, I'm so excited for all of you. We have opportunities, I think, to, if we want to, choose to look back at some of our work and refactor things, and instead do a bit less time styling stuff. I still want everyone to style things. It's up to you also how much you want to style things. But we have chances to reconsider a few different things or spend more time on accessibility than we would otherwise according to the main project brief. This is your project. This is up to all of you. But one opportunity I see here is for us to rethink the structure of our database, because the one that you just explained to Stacy gives us a few weird bumps in the road, as you probably have experienced. And we can totally rethink together what it would look like to store these items differently. There are other options, such as doing a sub-collection on a list if we wanted to, for instance. So whether it's right now or at the end of this meeting, I think that we could spend some time talking about what we want to handle and how, because we also have in our issue list some custom things that y'all created to point out things work you could still do later on. That's my soapbox.
I love it. Yeah, there are so many different ways that we've seen this particular project's database structured. And you know, like EJ was saying, they all come with some pros and cons and some complexities, but I think that reviewing something like that, like spending a little less time on styling, which again is totally up to you all what you want to do, and going back and refactoring some things can be a really advanced way to use your time. That could look really good and could provide you with some additional experiences to talk about that might be more than just like we use CSS to style, which again also can be very helpful if that's something that's really interesting to you. Another option is if you are just like, we want to just do the issues like they come with styling, I do fully encourage you all to work on this project after you've done it Collab Lab if you have time and if you want to. And when you do that, create GitHub issues. I know we talked about this a little last time, saying like, we are interested in reorganizing the database so that it's like this because we're going to run into these troubles, or it will help because of XYZ, so that you can go close those issues and you can know further down the line. If you decide to do this after this team wraps, all of our mentors are great and would be more than willing to help you if you get stuck or if you need help. So do know that you'll always be supported if you want help at Collab Lab on this project, or if you're working on another project. Your mentors are your mentors and we're here for you. So
Exactly.
yes, great thoughts, EJ. I love them all. Okay, any other questions about last week's issues? I usually would do, like, in all of the teams that I sit in on, would do like kind of a like backlog grooming sort of thing where we would look at the project board and be like, all right, are these closed? What's next? And shift things around. But you all do a fantastic job of closing out your issues right on time. So amazing work. And with that, I will turn it over to EJ to run retros.
Yes, let's hope that lets me share my screen. Everyone cross your fingers. All right, let's see if I can do it. I have the retro open. So first step accomplished, doing so good.
If it doesn't let you, I can totally do it. The sharing.
It's totally fine. Does anyone need more time to write in the retro while I'm fussing around?
I do need just like 3 minutes probably.
Okay, you hurry along while I get my computer to behave.
All right, let me does anybody else need the link or are y'all good? It's in Slack, but if you need it, everyone's good. Great, lots of thumbs up. Okay, I'm gonna mute and face mute and be 3 minutes and I'll get these in, I'm sorry.
You're totally fine. We are all doing our best over here. All right, so y'all should see my Firefox window. Is that correct? And I think I accidentally paused sharing. Okay. First of all, does anyone need more time to read or write anything in here before we start going down the list? I'll take silence as a no. Oh, Gabby, do you need time?
Yeah, I need like a minute. I forgot about
Okay, cool. How about this? I am going to grab some water real quick because I'm desperately thirsty, of course, right when it's my turn to present. And I will give everyone 2 minutes or so, and we'll rejoin in a sec. Okay, that was not 2 minutes because I'm bad at time, but I am here whenever we're ready to continue. Stacy, are you good? We can always buy time by going maybe through the things that we ourselves wrote rather than going sequentially.
Yes, go ahead. I am writing one more word and I'll be done.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to say, and I wrote this down, I really appreciate all of your hard work. And I said before, the things you have to be proud of are so important. And basically, I want to co-sign what Jill wrote about how it's great to see the reviews you're doing and that you're pushing really hard and that you are getting the stuff done. And it would have been totally okay if it didn't get done, but it did, and it happened, and you should be very happy about that. And let's see, other things. Let's read. Lots of appreciation for the teamwork. Lots of appreciation for the mentors. So thank you, everyone. And I also agree that the open environment that we have here is really great. Does anyone want to focus on any of the things that they wrote and talk about with the team before we move on to what went well?
I don't necessarily need to focus on it. You covered it all very well. But it has been amazing to jump into this team more than halfway through and see the incredible teamwork that you all have going on here, and to see how well you're supporting each other and the mentors are supporting you when you need it is amazing. I love the idea that we're fostering a space where you can ask for help, and I've seen help asked for publicly, which is a hard thing to do, but it's so good to see, and it's going to serve you so well in your dev journey. So I appreciate you all being open and helping each other and supportive. So great work here.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stacy.
I love the way that it is progressing each week, with like from the first week, the first retro, we're like, hey, we want to have some more chatter in Slack. And then, I don't know, that just seems to like improve every week in addition to like the code that we're working on. So it's a little bit of everything, and it's cool to see everyone working together to grow that way.
I agree. Anyone else before we go on to what went well?
I just want to say, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Ian.
I love that we're trying so hard to be appreciative real quick. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, like, thank you to the mentors for really like taking the time out of their like nights to come in and like try to help us and meet with us on such short notice. And it was super helpful to be able to have those sessions.
And I wanted to shout out EJ for continuing to give advice on accessibility, because I definitely didn't know much, and I'm learning something new each week. So thank you, EJ.
Yeah, that's been brilliant to see. Like, EJ, your expertise when it comes to accessibility stuff here has been so incredible. And I'm sad for all of our other teams that they don't get you. So this team is so lucky, and you're learning so much about accessibility. I love it.
Thank you. If my camera were working, you'd see that I'm blushing furiously currently, but I'm glad it's not. Thank you all. And seriously, us mentors are very happy to help however we can. We don't always have extra time, but if we do, we're happy to give it as much as we can. So it's something we're glad to do. As far as, well, before I keep blushing and then I die, lots of themes around good demos, the hard work and teamwork again showing up. There's, I think often appreciation blends into what went well, which is fine. It should. The boundaries aren't very clear, don't have to be. we the refactoring was very cool to see. I'm very glad that we got that done. Like Stacy was saying, we were discussing what could come next. It shows, I think, a lot of strong skills if we choose to pause feature work and go clean up our own house. I think the temptation when we're juniors is to do more and more and more stuff on top of an existing project, which can be valuable and can be a strong signal for many people. But I think the temptation to refactor isn't as strong in many juniors, and showing that you have it and showing that you want to clean up and keep your foundation stable before you add features is a really good signal for people who want to hire you in the future. This project will be a very valuable artifact for when you're looking for jobs, I think. Does anyone want to speak specifically on their what went well commentary before we go on? Because the themes are very similar, and I don't want to spend too much time reading every single thing.
I just want to briefly touch on, I had noted that, and I had said in this same meeting, that I was really impressed by how tidy you all keep your project board. Again, this is something that it's like, as junior devs, I feel like we put so much emphasis on our coding skills, like code really well, know how to do all the things, but really organization and communication is such a huge part of what's going to make you marketable as a junior dev. So if you can show that you have a beautiful project board and great communication skills in Slack, I think you're going to be really set up well. So keep doing that. That's going really well.
I completely agree. I could not get the Zoom controls to come back so I could unmute. Fun stuff. All right, as far as what can be improved, I do want to spend some time on this because I do think hearing out feedback is really, really important, and planning on what comes next is really important. I see a theme here about communication being improved, so it's good to know that we've been improving and still think we can improve. That's totally fine. So there, one thing I saw, I think it was Alex's, yes, communication between teams while working on separate issues. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Alex?
Yeah, I think just for something like this week where Terry and I had the less challenging issue, and Eden and Gabby were really challenged by the sorting, and it was cool. Like, I think it maybe also has to do with the fact that like we had those ad hoc like office hours that I wasn't able to attend, but I think it would have been nice to kind of see like the progression of like what was tried and what wasn't tried. And just like for me, I still don't 100% understand sorting items. So like having something to be able to review as like the issue is being tackled would have been really helpful to see.
That makes sense to me. And that kind of goes to my comment, which I'll just kind of try to summarize. Back to wanting more discussion in Slack than we have. We've gotten more and more over the course of this project, which is great. But I think that written artifacts for things that happen are very valuable because our memories are terrible as human beings. And because not everything can be perfectly captured in video, and nor should it be, because some people might not find video to be accessible, going back and listening to stuff in long form. So we want to make sure that we are leaving public chats for everyone to kind of update on things and or issues or comments on GitHub PRs or on the issues themselves. However we'd like to do it, we can discuss as a team what that should look like. But this is a good problem to have because it just means that we can get better and more available for our teammates in the future. Let's see. We forgot to put the daily work in documentation. Could you explain that one, Gabby?
Yeah, we started, I guess a few weeks ago, we were saying it was a good idea to put, like, as we worked on it each day, we just kind of put like a rundown of what we worked on that day, and usually kind of the documentation we used to look up stuff. So that was something we started, but I think me and Eden were so focused on just getting it that it honestly never really occurred to us until near the end. And we were suddenly like, oh crap, our Slack thing is completely empty and we didn't put any of our information in there. So I think there might be like one or two things sitting in there right now, but not covering nearly everything that we actually did.
I love that because like EJ keeps mentioning these artifacts, and those are such beautiful artifacts for you to return to remember like how you solved a problem. But I totally feel you that sometimes you've gone so many circles on things that you're like, I just can't remember where we've been or where we're going. So I love that you notice that's something that you need to do and you're going to work on it, because I think it's super important. So great catch.
I agree. I think that this is the main theme of all our feedback. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add before we talk about what we can do as an action? Do you want to add anything around this comment you made, Terry, about migrating our discussions?
Yeah, so this, I think this has been happening like throughout the weeks, but as the week goes on, our conversations tend to move from the thread to the automatic PR that gets posted in the Slack channel, and then eventually to the PR comments. And when you're trying to look at the whole bigger picture, like you would need to look at a few different spots. And I was wondering if we could come up with a way to consolidate that somehow, like whether like writing all of our documentation in the PR, or just like having one place to do it all.
I have an idea which we can take or leave. Oh, go ahead, Stacey.
I was just curious too, because like I personally hate those PR Slack messages. They take up so much space and they like look messy. Do you all like those, or should I just not? Hey, this is a knife. Anyway, do you all, would it be helpful to just get rid of those? Do you need those? Do you like having notifications when PRs are created?
I mean, I think in this case, it's helpful for us because it is all related to us. So
Okay.
if we get a notification that the other team made a PR, we know, hey, it's time to do the peer review. I guess once the merges are done, you guys know, hey, merges
And
are
you can
done.
just go right there. That makes sense. Like EJ,
I have an alternative suggestion based on what we do at work. We actually have a channel for those GitHub notifications, so that we can opt into them if we want to see them, if they're helpful to us. So would that be something that we prefer, or do you want to keep them exactly where they are in the main channel?
Another thought is like, what if we just created our PRs right at the beginning of the week and they're like empty, they have no code in them, but then that can be like your one thread where you put everything.
I'd like to point out that you can make draft pull requests on GitHub. In the UI, it's a relatively new feature. Back in my day, we couldn't do this, but you can actually say explicitly that PR is in draft, which means it's not ready for review, and your teammates then know that they should not be poking in to take a feedback yet. Any thoughts? We have a lot of different options. I want to make sure that we do at least one actionable thing, because this is all important, but we can't take on everything as an action item for the next 2 weeks.
I'm super into the idea of consolidating chatter.
I like the idea of using like the pull request as the pairing thread, as opposed to having a separate one. Then, because I think also like how we've been using it is that we, within the pull request, we'll start a thread tagging the other pair. And then once we do that, then maybe there's like a little bit of, there's all the information of like what we've done so far throughout the week as well, all in the same thread, as opposed to having to like jump to their pair thread, which we might not have eyes on all the time.
So I'm seeing that this could be a little bit of a discussion, which I want to have, but I also want to respect everyone's time. Does anyone have any hard stops at the hour in case we run over?
Nope,
okay, cool. Because there are a few interesting discussion items I want to have, and everything's important. I want to stack rank based on what is the most important. So shall we come back to this perhaps after we finish off thinking about the issues that in the coming weeks, so we can talk about how we can change our environment? What do you think, Stacey?
I think that is a brilliant idea, with this being like consolidate chatter being like the one action item that we really tackle this coming week.
Yeah, I believe that we should close our meeting by talking about how we want to do that, so that we can then start thinking about it. Because I wouldn't want to do this now and then come back to it later, because we'll forget stuff. We will.
Totally, I love it.
Cool. Thanks everyone for your feedback. I am really glad that we're thinking about how we can be a more effective team. We'll get there. It's always a work in progress. So I think, unless I am missing something, which is entirely possible, Stacey, that brings us to the issues.
Yep, I think we're ready for next week's issues.
Great. I have, again, I want to remind everyone that we can choose different priorities for the issues that are left over the next 2 weeks. If we want to discuss doing accessibility as an issue, we can de-scope some of our goals for styling. We can do other things. This is going to be a group effort, so just keep that in mind. Stacey, you want to take the floor?
Sure. So I thought that I had all this pulled up. Let me get over here real quick. Okay, cool.
I can totally do it if you want to be on mute because of the kids too.
As long as they're not bothering y'all, I barely hear them.
Oh no, it's
okay.
fine.
Okay, so the two issues we have this week are 13 and 14. Let me get you all out of the way here. Okay, 13 is, oh my gosh, Zoom, why you gotta be in the way always? Okay, as a user, I want to view details of my purchase to better understand my purchasing patterns. So the acceptance criteria for this are that from the shopping list, a user can tap the navigation into a detailed view of the item. The detailed view of that item should include the following information: its name, its last purchase date, the estimated number of days until the next purchase, and the number of times the item has been purchased. When in the item details view, a back arrow should appear in the header that takes the user back to the list view. So a lot of this data stuff that we already have, we just need a new view to display it to the users. What do you all think about this one? Do you have any questions about it? Good on that one? Cool, okay. Let's check out this other one, which is number 14. Issue number 14 is, as the user, I want the welcome screen to look pretty so that the app looks professional and welcoming. And this one is just like it says. You'll notice this wireframe here. You do not need to follow this as a style guide. What we would encourage is that you all get together as a full team and kind of decide together and collaborate on the direction of the styling for your app. Teams have brainstormed this in a bunch of different ways, but the styling that you put in place this week is largely going to define how the next week goes and what kind of styling will be put in place next week. Because this is a styling issue, and then next week is all styling issues. So if you get a good style put together and documented wherever you want, in your repo and Slack, wherever's helpful for you, then next week, what I was thinking based on what EJ was saying is that maybe one team takes on the styling and another team takes on accessibility issue or something. But if you have a good style guide in place this week, then that makes next week so much easier and gives us a lot more wiggle room, because there will be less discussion, brainstorming, deciding on styles, and more just tackling the issues. So again, one is creating a new view with data that already exists, and another is the beginning of our styling for this app. And then the third thing that will need to happen this week is all together collaborate on what we think the style for the app should be. So, questions on these, either one of them? No? Okay, I will go ahead and assign them.
I
And
did have a
go ahead.
question, actually, just to kind of bring the conversation back to what EJ was saying earlier about de-scoping the styling for this week and focusing more on the functionality of the application, especially with the restructuring the database. I'm like very interested in seeing if that's like something everyone else wants to do this week. I think it was like week 3, Terry and I did have a question about like how our database should be structured.
I love that. Yeah, so like move the styling away and add cards for database and accessibility or something.
Yeah, and we have 2 cards about accessibility already too, which is great. So we can always add more. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm just curious what everyone else thinks.
Yeah, I'd love a vote. So if anyone has any preferences on what we take on, if anyone would like to take on database stuff or anything else, let's hear it.
Yeah, I'd definitely be up
The-
for refactoring the Firestore.
Cool, that's another vote. Gabby, did I hear you speaking, or was it Eden?
Oh yeah, just so just to clarify, so we're gonna try to work on 13 and then skip 14 for now and focus on the issues we created, or
Honestly, like I think this one that's creating this new view fits really nicely with the styling because it is just creating a new view that's going to get styled anyway. So honestly, if you wanted to, we could just like work on these issues this week if you want.
And we could use bonus time in theory to start thinking of our style guide too, because I think what I think Stacey was saying before was that it's really important to have a set of agreed rules for styling, because that way you don't have to discuss as much going forward. You can just follow the playbook you've set for your team. And that in itself is a whole separate thing. Making style guides is a whole skill to have. And it's super great to talk about that. But this is your app and y'all can choose the issues next in whatever order you'd like to.
I love that. And that's such a good point, EJ. There's like full careers just around the styling portion of this. So it's kind of like what interests you the most? What kind of experience do you want to get while this team is running? Would you rather focus on database stuff, or are you really interested in the more, I guess, stylistic side of development? You know, like making front ends look really pretty. It just is whatever you're most interested in, and it's okay either way. So up to y'all.
I just want to offer my personal opinion so that you can hear it and we can make decisions based on whatever everyone likes. I think it's perfectly fine to have a style that looks clean and doesn't try to do too many fancy things, because as long as the user can use the style, that's successful to me. My idea of success is different from yours and from Stacey's and from Jill's, though, so I want to hear what your priorities are. If we're still team database refactor, we can totally do that. It's up to y'all.
I feel like we have a really good base style in place that we've built out over the last 6 weeks, but I'm not sure if this is like something that, you know, like how we all want the project to look by the end of like our time working on it, or if it's like placeholder styling for now.
Anyone have any thoughts?
I don't know how valid my thoughts are because I'm not a developer on the team, but I do love like the simplicity of the way that it looks right now. It looks really great. I noticed some tweaks that would need to happen to make it like really shine, you know, like the navigation, like laying over the list and stuff would need to be fixed. And there's like, you know, like having the delete button match the same kind of style as the rest, and like little tweaks like that. But again, if you all are fine with like this nice, simple style, then this is something that's easy to, after the team wraps and you want to kind of like work solo or even continue collaborating, it's something that is a little bit easier for one person to go in and be like, I'm going to document the styles we have here, and just go in and do smaller CSS tweaks to make the whole thing a little more cohesive. So
just to underscore what Stacey's saying, I think that a less is more approach to styling is totally defensible if you're talking about discussing this for a job interview. If you can say, we tried to make some custom appearances for all our elements and we wanted to make sure that they're accessible, we didn't want to overstyle it, we focused instead on the integrity of our code base and on accessibility, that's totally a valid position as far as someone who would be hiring you would like to think. So again, this is totally up to all of you.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to focus on accessibility and our code or our database, and like figuring that out. And I'm like thinking about how it would be nice to, since we usually merge every like Saturday afternoon, to be able to discuss as a team what we would want the app to be styled, or how we would want it to be styled, and if we want to like use any like templates, or if there's anything else that we want to utilize to style it.
I agree with that. Does anyone have any strong opinions about doing style and focusing on style over the database and accessibility? Because I want to make sure we hear everybody. Or are we all in agreement?
It's kind of like, I feel like the way that we can make this happen is we can sort of get the best of both worlds. Like, let's tackle these issues this week, wrap them up and merge them. And then I have no doubt that next week we couldn't get all of these things done. Because really, like, once you come up with the style, it's just popping into each of the pages and making sure it's applied to the elements. So I think that if we could knock these two out this week, we could definitely probably get all of these done.
I agree. And I also think that thinking about our code base, because I believe that that thinking about our database will require us to think about the code structure itself, the code organization again. If we do that, the code will be more stable and more friendly for us to implement new features on top of. When your code base is kind of messy, which happens to all of us, it's happening to me right now at work, it's a whole thing. It's harder to extend your own work because you can't find anything. And it takes more work as opposed to having things in one place, like we kind of learned from doing our services module. So if we do this now, we might be buying ourselves time on our future issues.
I love it. Great. So I think we're all in agreement that we can tackle these this week. Yay.
Do we also want to, like, there's these two specific issues, but I think there's also interest in just like adding accessibility, like as a general thing, and refactoring as a general thing. And do we want to, I don't know, create tickets to capture that, or maybe like just like collaborate throughout the week, have like a meeting where we maybe look at different things and then create tickets out of that? Or like, how do we want to approach some of the like cleanup that we've been talking about?
I feel you. I didn't even read these. I just moved these over assuming they were the two. I get what you're saying. We do need like specific tickets for the specific things we're going to be tackling so that we know like what the acceptance criteria and stuff is. So let's do that.
Also, Stacy, I would be curious to hear your opinion, but it's totally okay if we can get more than 2 things done in a week, because we might be making tickets and decide that they're actually smaller in cost than we think they are.
Yeah.
And
I mean, let's get as much done as we can.
Exactly.
I want to get as much done as we can, but I want to make sure that we're like sticking to the roughly 5 hours a week. So I don't want anybody to feel, you know, like we have to do extra. So what are the top 2 main things we want to get done? One was restructure database, right? And I'm not going to write anything here. I'm going to let you all fill this out for practice, and because I think you know kind of what direction you're going to take this in. But in here, I'll say like user story. As a developer, I would like a database that, do we know how we want it structured yet? Or are we kind of like, we just want a database that will scale more fluidly?
We can use our time as a team to discuss the AC and the goals for this too. Again, I want to mind everyone's time because we booked an hour for this, but if we all feel like we can stay, I'm happy to do this now rather than have a separate meeting.
Okay, I'm just going to create this issue like this, and then we can optimize it in a little bit or whatever. Who is interested in the database one versus the other one, which is, was it accessibility is the other one?
I believe it was.
Okay, cool. Database restructuring, and the issues are, I keep having to move Zoom, so sorry y'all. Or the teams this week are Alex and Eden, and Terry and Gabby. So anybody for restructuring database? Anybody feel like they've a good grasp on what's going on in there now and interested in refactoring it?
Anyone who feels very strongly that it should change so that you can be happy with the work.
Yeah, that's a good point. If not, I'm just going to assign it to the top, Alex and Eden. Good with that? Does that scare anyone? Okay. Let's see. Assign to Alex and Eden. Okay. So there's that one. And then let's do. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No.
I just think it's a good opportunity. This one in particular strikes me as one that like getting that chatter in the Slack channel and getting everyone's input, since like everyone's going to be using the database. That seems like just like a good opportunity to think about what we were talking about in retro.
Totally. I love that. Okay, and so this next one, what exactly do we want to focus on in improving the accessibility? Were there certain specific things there?
As I recall, Terry, you wanted to generalize the modal that you built, is that right?
Yeah, I think since we're still using some like default alerts, we want to make them more custom.
Mm.
And I think EJ, you also mentioned that the delete model that we made wasn't accessible. So maybe learning how to create accessible models.
Now, the how-to, I was thinking about this because it's really important that we give that practice, but also it's hard in a way that's very annoying and maybe not worth your time at this point in the project or in general. I wouldn't make my own modals in React if I could help it, because people have done that work for me, and that prior art is really important. So yeah. I personally am okay with trying to find a good library, because even I don't know for sure that I have a strong opinion about a good library that exists. And then perhaps as a separate thing, maybe a small workshop we do together talking about, just in plain JavaScript, what the success criteria for a good modal are. Stacey, how do you feel about that?
I love it. I love it so much. So try to find a good library, because this is the ticket basically we're talking about, right? Creating some kind of reusable modal to replace all modals or all things. So we'll try to find a good library with an accessible modal, and I'll say, and EJ will host a small workshop that discusses, the way you just put it was so good, EJ, something about
the success criteria for a proper modal.
For a proper modal. I love that. Beautifully said. As per
if we were to pause and work on this, this would be a full 2-week sprint on its own, in my opinion, just because it's something that I would want everyone to learn deeply and properly. But then again, in a quote unquote real project on real production software, you wouldn't be making your own modal in-house, because that is a I think we discussed this a couple weeks ago, Stacey. Making all your own stuff leads to a lot of work for you, because then you have to maintain all your own stuff. Whereas if you have a library that you've tested and that works for your use case, it's their job to maintain it and tell you if there are issues, and you can focus on the core issues of your product, which is why I'm pro library in this case. So
EJ, do you think that if we found a library that has a good modal and we popped in to replace it all, do you think that that's something that we could get done in 1 week? In the 5 hours?
I think so, definitely. It's okay. The learning how to do it yourself that I would want everyone to spend time on.
Okay, cool. So let's just take that approach for now. But like, if you could still host some kind of workshop, that would be brilliant. And if we could invite like everybody, just come learn a little bit more about modals, I think that's something that would benefit so many people.
I definitely would be happy to do that. I think that getting this modal in production in our app would be the first step. And this is also a great opportunity, by the way, when you're interviewing about this project and for your next jobs, to say that we made deliberate choices to use a library because X, Y, and Z, because we know that it's hard, because we know that we don't have the time. And those kinds of choices are great for hiring managers to hear.
Absolutely. I love it. Okay, so then this one is going to be assignees Terry and Gabby. Okay, so if we pop back over here, we can see that they're all signed, they're all in progress. EJ, I'll let you kind of take the floor on optimizing this. I'll do the typing if you want, if you just want to lead the discussion, because I haven't really been involved a whole lot.
I definitely want to do this while we're here, because I think doing this synchronously would be really good. Am I right in remembering that Terry, you and Alex had thoughts on the database before, or had questions about how we could at least think differently about it?
Yeah, we were the ones who originally set up the structure the way it is now. And we had some other ideas, like, but we were confused on like how Firestore would handle the querying. Like the difference between querying a collection versus querying documents.
So I think that the best way forward to decide what a good implementation would be for us to acknowledge and surface the pain points we see with our current implementation. So does anyone have any thoughts about how what we have now is difficult?
Having to go 3 layers in to get to the information.
Could you explain?
Like I guess how we have to go from list to token to item name to the stuff inside. But it also seems like a lot of times when we look at documentation, it often stops at like that first document. So like list token, and that's usually it. So I don't know, maybe we could find a way to get the tokens to be created where list is maybe. And then put the items in the second layer instead of third and fourth.
I hear you. Thank you. Anyone else have any thoughts on pain points?
Querying. I think the way we have it set up and the way we're currently querying right now, it seems like if you read the Firestore documentation, there's actual, what's it called, like ways you can do it, which we're not using. That seem to like be able to get that data for you much easier than how we're doing it now.
Could you expand on when you said ways we could do it that we're not using? What do you mean maybe with different data structures or something else?
Just like, sorry, I'm just gonna pull this up. I guess like if you look at the Firestore kind of like documentation, they actually give you examples and methods of how to query like collections or documents. But I think because we've nested things 3 layers deep, I don't think there's a way to query fields, or so we've kind of had to come up with a workaround.
Right.
I think it's like read data. So there's like add and manage data, and then the accordion below.
And that might be why order by wasn't working for us too.
I am muted. Okay, which of these documents would be helpful for me to post in here for you? This just query data, get data. I just want to make sure I'm posting notes in here. Like this is how we'd like to.
Stacey, could you hop back over to the documentation for a sec, please?
Of course, yes.
I think I'm gonna. Can you open up the Understand Cloud Firestore accordion? It's a couple above the one. There you go. I'm trying to find the article that I'm thinking of that might be useful, so we could totally be wrong. Okay, could you open up add and manage data? Sorry, I'm trying to find the subtopic.
No worries, yeah. Structure data.
Structure data seems like a good place to reference for thinking about how we want to go through stuff.
Let's see, I'll do resources. Advice on how to structure data.
I'll add one pain point, which I think, I'll let you finish your link there, sorry.
Go ahead. Pain point.
One pain point I think I see is that the Firebase docs kind of scare us away from doing nesting, which might actually be useful. Because the pain point that I see is that we've got an object with properties, and to me, that model doesn't reflect what a list actually is. I don't know if that makes sense to me outside of to anyone else outside of my head, but we could be thinking differently about this than putting properties on objects, because we've had to do some weird magic, as we've all seen, to update and add properties. Does that make sense to everyone else?
So like, I know nothing about how it's set up right now, to be fully transparent here, but it sounds like, oh, right, because you have right now the list, and on that list, that's where like all the items live. And
so just as a refresher, what we have is a collection of lists. Each list is an object. Each property on the object is the item.
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha. Okay.
And I believe what happened here, what happened to me too when I first made my first Firebase project, was that Firebase warns you heavily against making lists of things, but that doesn't mean that all lists are evil. It might be correct for our use case to use a real list, a real collection. Does that make sense?
Mhm. So, okay, so these are the pain points, bold. Here's some resources. Whoever is doing this will dig into like how data should be structured based on Firestore's perspective, but like some other notes from EJ's perspective is I'm wondering if we can get some notes in here on like, or like maybe suggested things to consider, like suggestion, all lists are not evil. We could consider using a proper list here. Other thoughts?
Does anyone
you
have
wanna
any
add to
thoughts?
that?
Any thoughts on, I guess, what the ideal structure could look like? This is a hard question, by the way, so it's totally fine if you'd like to take time to think about it, because data structuring is a whole abstract mess that kind of requires doing art in your head.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Take your time, but if we have thoughts now, this is a great time to capture them while we're all here in the same place.
I love the idea of like taking time to think about it. Also, what I would encourage is, yes, look at Firestore's documentation, but as you've all noted, like it maybe can be challenging, and documentation in general, I'm sure you've noticed, is sometimes not the best place to go for resources on how to use that tool. So I would very much encourage you to also just Google at large, like ways to structure the database, because often I find I learn the most from people's like written blogs where they're like writing their experiences and I can like relate to their experiences rather than digging through documentation. So it might be a good place to start just kind of seeing what other people are doing.
And also as a tertiary piece to what Stacy is saying, the reasons we see opinions about what to do and not to do with Firebase's database is because problems happen at large scales, and your app does not have a large scale problem yet. You can always reconfigure the database again if you have a scaling problem or you predict a scaling problem. Don't let perfect be the enemy of the good, as they say.
Another like note suggestion here is talk openly and share openly about your ideas as you come across them, because like the more you can get this out in public, the quicker we can like backtrack if we need to.
Do we want to set a goalpost for when we would like to come back and have these AC defined in the middle of the week in case we don't do them right now today?
I actually have a question about the current database, if that's okay with everyone. I see there's a newish collection called items.
That was me messing around. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
And so you have items, and then you have the actual like items in a document, and then within that specific item, you have a field that then has like the frequency, list ID, and the name. I'm just curious about, like, I guess this could be a separate discussion, but I'm just curious about the thought process behind structuring your list that way, and
Sure.
or like how we can implement that.
Right. Number one, I did that because I wanted to make sure that when I was building my app, I wasn't doing any more conflicts with your database, because I destroyed that one list that one time and nearly died of guilt. So then I was like, what can I do to make something that won't conflict with the database? Number two, I said before that I think that for me, it's very difficult to reason about adding items as properties on an object, because that to me doesn't represent a list of things. And so I thought about maybe doing an items collection that is a list, because collections are essentially lists. And that way it truly is a shopping list and not a shopping tree with branches on it, I guess, to use a metaphor. Does that make sense?
Oh, I like that idea of having like items be on their own like collection or whatever. It just makes like, again, like with all the issues we're having with nesting and stuff, like, and having to do like find a token and then find a name will all disappear, because you'll be able to just find a token and use a token for things. It simplifies things a little bit, I think.
Some nesting will also be better than what we have now. I think it's worth pointing out, because we could trade the nesting for a different kind of nesting rather than more nesting. Another option that would be worth researching is that Firestore does allow nested collections. So a collection on a document. In this model, you would have a collection of lists, and on each list, you have a sub-collection that is the item of the list.
Sorry, did I capture that right?
I think so.
Still getting crazy.
And there are pros and cons to every single solution that we could, in theory, work toward here. We will have joys and sadness with any of these options. But I think that either way, thinking about this carefully now will be a very valuable experience for everyone here.
I agree. Okay, so let's do this too. When do you think that y'all can have a better idea of what direction you want to take and have the acceptance criteria completed, like EJ was asking? Is it reasonable to have that done by like Tuesday? Discuss and research and kind of come up with what approach you think is best.
I'm also down to spend some time today if everyone would like to make a separate meeting just for this to discuss the database pros and cons, just to hear out the form, if you will. It's up to y'all. Does anyone have any ideas for a preferred due date for these AC, or should we maybe discuss meeting today? Thoughts, feelings, questions, comments, concerns?
Do y'all have time to meet later today on this one?
I actually have a question about office hours next week. Are we still gonna do it on Tuesday? Because if we are,
that's up to y'all.
We might be able to determine the AC by office hours and then discuss a little bit more.
I just want to make sure that we, I believe, Eden, it was you who got a new job that was conflicting with our usual office hours, and we've been leaving you out. First of all, I apologize. So is there a time that you know for sure works for you?
Yes, so I'm off at 6 p.m. CT, so anytime like starting at 6, I'm free.
Okay. Does that cause any schedule conflicts for anyone else? So I believe that means if I can't do time zones, do you think I would be able to after years of working remotely? That would be 5 p.m. Pacific, right? Because you said CT, yes?
Yeah, I think it's 4 p.m. Pacific.
Oh, okay, so it's 2 hours. Okay, I don't know how time works, as I just said. And then I forgot who was doing office hours this week.
I'm not sure either, sorry.
I just had it open and it's left my brain. I believe it is Jill.
I think the way that we listed it was like offset by a week. So
oh, it
this
is,
one, I
you're
guess
right.
will be Stacy hosting.
Oh, okay. Sure. Sounds good. I have not looked at my calendar at all, so let me get back to you in Slack about when office hours will be. I would strongly suggest you, as soon as you can, meet with EJ to kind of talk about the approach that you want to take and kind of get some better ideas, because you probably, if you don't get EJ's thoughts, who knows the state of the database and stuff, you could spend a lot of time kind of spinning your wheels in the wrong direction, or just kind of not really knowing even what to search. So definitely meet with EJ and kind of come up with what approach you think you'll take and get these AC rolled out.
And again, I have time today, so I want to make sure that we leave Stacy to plan her calendar. Calendars are the worst. But does anyone have, could anyone not meet at some point today? I guess is a better question. If the answer is no, then I'm happy to pick whatever time works best for all of you. Cool, I will take the silence as assent. In that case, should we tentatively plan for maybe meeting in approximately 2 hours at 5 p.m. or a little bit later than that? Anyone have any thoughts? I want to make sure we all get a break so we can go to something else before coming back to code.
I think too, as long as as long as Alex and Eden can definitely make it,
Mhm.
you know, like you can catch up on the rest of, you know, the decisions that were made and stuff throughout the week. But
That's true.
so Alex and
So
Eden are good.
does anyone have any preferences between, let's say, 5 and 6 p.m. Pacific, which would be in 2 or 3 hours from now?
I don't have a preference.
Okay. And Eden, do you have a preference between 5 and 6?
Yeah, I would prefer earlier, so
Okay.
I think 5 should be good.
Okay, 5 works for you. And Terry and Gabby, does 5 work for you? 5 p.m. Pacific?
Yes.
I keep saying the time zones out loud so that I don't get lost. So that's just gonna be me. That's a habit I have. And Gabby? Oh no, did we lose? Oh, there you are.
Yeah, sorry.
5 works for you?
Yep.
You're good. Cool. We will get that done. And Stacy, can you make a meeting for that just so we have the full hour? You're on mute currently. If you are speaking to us, there. Thank
Yes,
you.
I can do that, or I can like shoot you the paid credentials or whatever, because I don't know if I create it and if I'm not there, if it'll still go off. Will it?
I will try. Let's go ahead and share the credentials with me, because I think that will be safer.
Okay.
That'll be a bit.
Cool.
That'll be less
Sounds
scary.
good.
All right.
No
cool.
worries.
Thank you.
And if you could record that meeting too, that'd be great.
Absolutely. And
I'd
then
love for
we
other
still
people to
have
be able to see it.
we still have one more issue to get through, and I want to make sure again remind everyone's time. We want to sketch out that accessibility thing, right?
Yes. I think it's pretty.
I
Okay,
think
so
it is.
create a reusable modal to replace all other modals.
Mhm. Oh, we did sketch this. Okay, my brain was just making more problems than there actually were. Cool.
Yep. And if y'all want to make, like, do feel free to like edit and add to the issues and stuff. They're yours. Make them make sense. Sorry, it's getting really loud over here.
No, you're good. And or ask us questions if you want us to clarify things for you. That is our job. We're happy to do it. So I think that's everything on the issues and the main goalposts for this week.
Yes. The last quick thing is, I know we didn't come to a resolution about like what threads we're going to use for other things, but I think I won't post pairing threads. So I'll leave it to you all to, what I would recommend is create your branch, put up a draft pull request right away, even if there's no code in it, and maybe try just using that PR thread as your pairing thread for this week until we can decide what we want to do.
I agree with
that. Make sense to everyone? Good. Okay. I know this was a lot. There's a lot of new things going in here that we haven't done at Collab Lab. So you're trailblazing, which is super exciting. And I think it's really exciting. I think this is a really exciting kind of like detour from what teams usually do. And I'm really excited to see what you all come up with. So great work, great demos, great retro, and great brainstorming here at the end. Anybody have any questions before we close this and come back at 5 p.m. PST? Good. All right.
Cool.
I will post about office hours in Slack. So stay tuned for those. All right.
Thank you all for your extra time. Appreciate it.
Yes. Let me stop my screen share so I can see all you. Hi. Okay. With that, great work. I'm excited to see what happens next week, and we will be in touch a little bit later. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. See y'all shortly.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.